Hello and welcome back to our history lessons all about the Wars of the Roses. Now, we know from our previous lesson that there was much conflict during the Wars of the Roses, and there was a fight between Henry VI and his distant relative, Edward IV. Now, Henry VI had a very good claim to be king, as his father, Henry V, was king before, and he was an excellent king of England. However, Henry VI was a very weak king. He was very unsuccessful on the battlefield. He was very easily manipulated by his French wife, and he was the victim of bouts of madness, which means that he would go into his room and he would just spend time just on his own, and sometimes he would do some very strange things. So they saw him as being a very weak king. His distant relative, Edward, had therefore claimed that he should be king instead. Edward's claim to the throne was much more powerful because of how well he was doing on the battlefield. However, his claim to the throne realistically was quite poor. He was the great-great-grandson, so that's very far down your family tree, of Edward III, who was another king of England. And however, he was a very far better king than Henry VI, and he ruled England for about 22 years. Henry VI ruled England from 1422 to 1461, and then again in 1470 to 1471, so only for 1 year before it revolted. Then he had a very good claim to the throne, and his father and grandfather had been very popular and successful kings before him. However, he was a very rubbish warrior. He lost the 100 Years' War against France, and he allowed England to fall into lawlessness and criminality. So England didn't have an awful lot of power over France at that time. He was very easily manipulated by his French wife, who was called Margaret of Anjou, and suffer from periods of madness, as we said before. And then he would get to the point where he wouldn't even be able to eat. So he wasn't going to be very strong in battle because he couldn't bring himself to eat to have any energy. Edward IV took the throne from Henry VI in 1461, and he then ruled until 1483. And aside from a brief period that he had in 1470 to 1471, where Henry took back the throne, he was a giant for the time, and was about 6'2". Now my husband is about 6'1", 6'2", so I don't see that as being a giant because he's not that much taller than me, really. But in the time, lots of people were a lot shorter than what we all are now. So he was 6'2", and he was an inspiring military leader. So can you imagine just having this really tall giant man coming towards you on the battlefield? It must have been pretty threatening. His family believed that Henry VI was not fit to be king, and that Edward, who had descended from Edward III, but it was his great-great-grandfather, so a long while down that line, could do a better job. Now, Edward had won great victories in the battles of Towton and Tewkesbury and never lost a battle on English soil. He was very wise and a very capable king, but sometimes he was just a little bit lazy. Let's take a look at some of the vocabulary we're going to be using today. The 100 Years' War was a war that was fought between the Plantagenet family, who were at the time the rulers of England, and a family who ruled in France in Burgundy. Now, these later link into our Lancaster family and our York family. So the Yorks came from the Plantagenet family, and then our Lancaster family then link into our rulers of France as well, because they had lots of marriages over there. The 100 Years' War, a very good piece of trivia for you to remember, is that it didn't actually last for 100 years. It lasted for slightly longer. So it lasted for 116 years. And this wasn't just one war. It was made up of lots and lots of battles that were fought over that period of time. It's a very long time to be fighting. Henry VI. Now, we know that Henry VI was the son of Henry V, who was previously on the throne. He was a king, and we also know that he was prone to bouts of madness. Also had a French wife, so we're going to learn a little bit more about him today. Edward IV. Now, Edward IV was the cousin of Henry VI, and he felt that he had a better claim to the throne because Henry VI was not a strong king. He was very weak and was very poorly. So Edward IV thought that he had a better claim. He was also very, very good on the battlefield, and coming in about 6'2" at that time would have been very, very tall. Lancaster and York are the two houses that came together in lots of these battles. The House of Lancaster, where Henry VI was a part of this house, and then the House of York, which Edward IV was a part of. Today we're going to hear from both kings, and both kings are going to tell you all about their time on the throne, about their family, about their children, and about their marriages. I want you to listen to the kings very carefully, open the Google Doc that's attached to this lesson, and have a go at popping all of the information you hear throughout the video into the Google Doc in the right places to create a little fact file for each king. Once we've done that, there are some questions to help you to compare both kings, and then I want you to have a little think about who you think deserves to be on the throne the most. And why. I'm really excited to hear your answers, and we're going to have a little bit of a debate about it on our Google Classroom and in our Padlet.
My name is Henry VI. I'm from the House of Lancaster, which, as we know, is absolutely the best house. I am the King of England, and my father, Henry V, was king before me. That is why this throne belongs to me. My blood is in it. This throne is mine. My son will succeed me, Edward of Westminster, Prince of Wales, and my beautiful wife joins me at the throne, Margaret of Anjou, and she comes all the way from France. I'm wondering if you can research the battles I was involved in throughout the war and the battles that I won.
Mrs. Wensley tells me that you have been learning all about the War of the Roses and me. My name is Edward IV. I am from the House of York. My father was Richard, 3rd Duke of York, and although I don't have a very strong claim to the throne, I believe that I would serve the best in battles, keeping England absolutely fantastic. I was involved in many battles, including the battle at Towton. I think that you guys could do some research about the battles I was involved in and the ones that I won and add them to this document that you're creating all about me.
So now it's your turn. Open your Google Doc and add the information to the table that you learned about the kings from this video. Then answer the questions that are below the table in your Google Docs, not forgetting that all-important question: who deserves to be the king and why? Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys all next week on Thursday afternoon for our next lesson, which is all about the princes in the tower. Have fun. Bye.